Um, Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today. I'm Daniela Vasco. I'm the chair of the Early Career and Students Statisticians Network, and we are hosting this session today in collaboration with the Statistical Computing and Data Visualization section. And before we start, I just would like to do the acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the Statistical Society of Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. And we pay our respect to the elders past and present, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So before we start, I'd like to do also a quick housekeeping notes. This session would take around 60 to 75 minutes, depends on how the Q&A goes, how people get excited with the questions. And it is recorded. And so please also post your questions in the chat, and then we go through them in the end of the Q&A part of this session today. And the focus today is very practical. So it's what makes a Die Cook Award application a good, strong Die Cook Award application, and best practice for building and documenting R packages and common challenges and how to overcome them, and ways to contribute to R and the open source eco-environment ecosystem. And so for that, we brought together a powerhouse panel, and I'm very thankful for our panelists for joining us today and for sharing their knowledge and their expertise. So we have Die Cook, a distinguished professor and the namesake of the prize. And we have Patrick Lee, first recipient of the Die Cook Prize. We have Nick Tierney, a freelancer statistician, R package developer, and former Die Cook judge. And also Fontika, a postdoctoral research fellow, R package developer and open source advocate. And we have Thomas Wozniak, senior lecturer and also a mentor of a past winner of the prize. So we have a variety of expertise in this panel, and we are very thankful for you all. And if you want to read more details on their bios, please visit the page for this event. We have much more details about their experience and their expertise as well. So before we start the conversation, I'm delighted to hand over to Professor Die Cook to introduce the prize.
Thanks, Daniela. I have to say, I'm awfully embarrassed. I'm awfully embarrassed having the name after me, but it's for good reasons. The origin of this award comes from the Victoria and Tasmania branch of the Statistical Society of Australia. And it was really Emmy Tanaka that spearheaded the award. And she said, whether you like it or not, it's going to be named after me. And that it still embarrasses me, but at the time I said, there's only two ways that will happen. Either I'm dead or I fund it. So I fund it. I funded an award after me. How egotistical is that? It's like, oh my gosh. And every time I'm terribly embarrassed when that comes up. But the purpose of this award is really, really important. The goal is to encourage software development skills amongst our students, and I'm expecting many of you that are here today are in your studies at some institution or close to graduation. So if you are thinking about submitting to this award, the purpose is exactly for supporting your software development work. And why is that important? Because more than anything else, your software has the chance of provides a chance for people to use your work more than any other form of communicating your research. Software has that ability that allows other people to actually work with the methods that you develop. So it's a very impactful area of work. And it's still a little underappreciated, and I would like a lot more, like to see a lot more in Australia. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you so much, Dai, and we think it's very well fit, your name for the prize. And and we'll start the conversation. And I'd like to start with a broad question, and I think it's a big question for all the panelists, and you join in as you like. We want to do this as fluid as we can. So what are the top 3 things that we'll be looking for in a winning entry this year? Or when you were a winner, what were the 3 things that you think was the most important? So you put in your shoes as you answer this, what you feel that is fit. The 3 key things that you think makes a strong application.
Perhaps I start first.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess the first thing that I would looking for winning entry this year would be the package is well purposed. So it actually solves some meaningful problem or meets some clear need. And the package is only valuable if it has a purpose that someone can actually use it to solve some problem. And the second thing that I would concern the most is does it have clear documentations and explanations? So many of the packages are really good, but they don't have good documentation. So people are difficult to use them. And some of them are not giving you the feeling of approachable. So they may have implemented some sophisticated statistical method, but it all sometimes it directs you to the original paper or the articles. So a package should implement those things and also use human readable or non-expert language to explain them clearly.
Great. Thanks for the tips, Patrick. Feel free to add to those things.
I could happily contribute if you don't mind. Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for the invitation to this panel. Well, there are, I would say, like the 3 features of the package would be a little bit of creativity, good tech, and communication. So I have to say that, you know, 2 of these aspects that I just mentioned is the creativity and communication is like, I think, very important for an award aspect that, you know, otherwise it is also important, but this type, I think, of an award has this additional aspect that it attracts submissions from, you know, a variety of different fields. And in a way, one has to, you know, get the idea what the package is all about. And here, like creativity in terms of what's this purpose of this package, how to communicate, how to make it a little bit of fun, is like a non-negligible aspect. I would say communication, expanding on Patrick's point, that would be not good documentation, but also good documentation in broader sense, as the website, as the available tutorials. And, you know, it takes time to deliver and develop those, but at the same time, there are invaluable resources for the users. And especially, and also in the context of the award, I have the feeling that it's also important. And then good tech. Good tech in a sense that it has to be a pretty good R package in the end, in the sense that there are so many open source or openly available resources of, you know, establishing the standards, establishing the checks, writing how to achieve those. And very often when you see or read internet fora of people complaining about their packages being not accepted to CRAN, or like the problems that they are highlighting often are very basic and covered in many different resources. So in a way, you have to go through these resources and accommodate these things into your package. And I think that's in general very important for the package, but also for an award is like a quick, nice check to move on with.
Great. Thank you. Nick, would you like to add to that? You're mute.
So I lowered my hand and I just like, that'll unmute me. Yes, great point so far from Thomas and Patrick. Like really great. I think documentation is really important. I think as well as like, there's just a lot of good points there. It's hard to, I would just be nodding furiously throughout. So anyway, the thing I would say that's like the minimum thing, like your package has to be installable. Otherwise we can't really review it. And that does get harder sometimes. Like I maintain the Greta R package, which talks to TensorFlow. Making that installable is hard. But if we can't install the package, it's really hard for us to review it. And if like in order for your package to win, if it was uninstallable, it must have like incredibly good documentation and really be solving like an amazing problem. Like you would have to have extra amazing documentation of that. I also think that writing code is really similar to writing in general. And so this is sort of on Tomas's point that when you so being creative is part of that process as well, but also just there's some general sense of like, how are you guiding me through like, how to use this software? So is it easy to read and understand? Again, like you can have a really good idea for a package that solves a really important problem. And if we can see that that is like, wow, that's like, say you have now got, I don't know, like a Bayesian model running in linear time or something, it'd be like, okay, that's clearly an incredible advance. And if your documentation is terrible, we could be like, this is a life-changing problem here. But in lieu of that, like having some really clearly written documentation that really guides people through, like why should we use this thing and what problem is this solving, and just trying to make that as easy as possible. And then there's all these opportunities to make things creative and friendly as well. And one of the things I really liked about Patrick's submission was there was just some really great command line interface of the CLI package. It made it really clear to me as a user that this is someone who's trying to make this fun and also like trying to really direct me to this. And with Tomas's student, he had a really great website and there was a lot of documentation there. So those are things that really guide you towards there, like towards a happy place as a user.
That's great. Thank you, Nick. And I think that leads into the next question that I had, that was like, what was the minimum I need before I submit? I think you all touched on that, like needs to be installable, some documentation that makes it easy to understand and to see the goal of the package and what you wanted, and a little bit of creativity as well as like a plus. Anything that you need to add to that, like the minimum that a person needs to submit if they are thinking of applying for the prize, even if they don't win, but if they just want to try, give it a go. Was that all covered?
Yeah, but I think that non-eligible aspect here is to run the checks, locally and like all this. So the default check for our package is that you can run locally very quickly. It's not that insightful. It's good to kind of adjust the procedure to the CRAN submission standards. It seems sometimes hard and painful because you have to like correct the links that you provide in the documentation, but at the same time, this is what makes it usable for the user. I mean, this recently, have you seen this recent post on social media about the claim that Python needs their own CRAN, and with the repository standards being as high as for the CRAN. And this is like quite amazing how the standardization of our packages provides actually great quality for the user. So this checks, just run the checks and make certain that you correct all these warnings, notes, and hopefully not errors, and that's fine.
I think another aspect that no one's mentioned yet is having a GitHub repo for the software. It's made it easier to evaluate software when it's posted on a GitHub repo that's available to all the judges.
That's great. Thank you.
So one more aspect, if I could add about this repo and in general the project management along the way on the package, is that, for instance, that's what we had with Adam. So our package that won the award was we could easily document how many lines of codes Adam has contributed as, and of course, like the contribution of the line of codes is not yet the ultimate check. There are other like quality checks, I guess, for the package to pass the student-driven project, but this is like a very strong backup to the claim, I think. So it is also, there's all these good practices that come with project management and the positive spillovers.
Nick?
Great. Yeah, I think just to touch on those things, like as Dai's point about it should have a GitHub page. Like we have to be able to find it. I think that's important. And so that it could be on CRAN, like that could be a way to find it. But I think beyond that, if your package doesn't have a vignette or a README, I think that those are things that like the documentation elsewhere throughout the package would have to be like extremely good. But overall, I think it should, at a minimum, have a README. It should ideally have a website, and there should be at least one vignette that is some kind of overview. And I would really hope to see tests to show, even if it like just the existence of some tests. Testing does take time to get really good, but I think if there's something there to say this package has had like that extra layer of review from the developer with a test, that's important. And again, installable, very important. And it really has to solve some kind of problem or relieve some kind of pain. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask one question to Dai, just quick prompt. That is, what single trait most clearly separates a price level package from a solid one, and why would that be the trait that really makes that difference for you?
Was that to me or to Nick?
To you, Dai. If you can, I'm just having some questions that I'll start with one of the panelists, but then anyone can contribute to that answer as well. But thank you, Nick. I think I said, but perhaps was low. Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard to say one particular aspect. Having the ability to see all the code that's available in sort of the development pipeline, but also the web page. If you've got it on the GitHub repo, there's a website associated with it, sort of illustrates that you're excited about it. So having that level of that sense that this is a creative activity, and you've kind of enjoyed making this software. It's like, you know, making dinner for your family in a way. It's like having something that's other people are going to enjoy. I think those are that's the difference between a winner and ones that didn't quite make it. But more than that, in the sense of probably those qualities were there, and the amount of content in the package was a difference between the winners versus the runners-up in some of the past competitions. In making a decision, that level of complexity of the package also factored into whether the software won the award or not. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Thomas, if I could ask you a question as well as mentoring in the students, what would like people starting, having their own the first R package, what is the mistakes that you find that many make, and what like would be your advice to fix that mistake if you have students making the same mistakes over and over? That sometimes happens. So
that's a big question. So I have to say that I started developing packages before the big era of AI. So my recommended way would be read the documentation and internalize it, in the sense that, you know, really think of the documentation with respect to what the package has to do, what how the package has to be constructed, how to include many different elements into that. And in a way, the one beauty thing is that like nothing will really replace your competence. So, you know, if you even with the AI out there, you are the brain of the project, and you can use AI to do some things easier, or to do some things like to delegate some things, you know, on a sidebar, but in the, you know, but in a way, again, you're ultimately signing it off, and you are responsible for all that. and you have to know that what you're using is good. So, this working with when I was working with Adam, so Adam is my PhD student, the package was Adam's initiative in the sense that he started coding the basic code, and then we think like, oh, there's actually quite some demand for this type of analysis. So, why don't we put it as a package? And then we jumped on, writing, developing the structure for the package and leveraging some of the experiences that I had. But of course, Adam has already written quite some essential code. So we had to adapt that, and like it's working with the co-author. You have to really adjust and work together. And when you get, then you submit the package to CRAN and you run all the checks, you pass all the checks, and then they are running some additional checks for C++ code, for instance. And then you see, in 2 weeks, that despite everything working on your laptop and passing the checks, it still doesn't comply with the third upcoming version of whatever library you're relying on. And then you have to sit and find the solution. And then, there is helpful documentation, but in a way you have to become the master of the domain, let me put it this way, and signing. But altogether, I think that fun aspect is important for that, making it work is also fun. Making it work with the requirements can be also fun. So that's on the process side.
I also make one more comment to that. Your package and your software doesn't have to be perfect. So waiting to have everything absolutely as great as you'd really like it to be before submitting is probably counterproductive. You never know who else has submitted. And awards are a little bit relative to what other software applications are in the same pool as you. So don't feel that everything has to be absolutely perfect.
And I suppose as well they might get some feedback why they did, like, do they receive some feedback if they don't get the prize, or not really, just asking if in case someone applied but was really close, so they know why they didn't get the prize. But they might ask, right? They get their package reviewed in a way, so
I think there's always been some feedback sent back to all the applicants, but also even like last year we had a number of people talk about their work, which is also, it's even if we don't have the funding to fund everyone or make everyone a winner, there's often a lot of good entries, and it's worthwhile for us all to hear about many of the different submissions. I think Germini, who's in here, presented in the last round as well. So even though it might not get a financial prize, there's some publicity that might be one reward. We all want to hear about all this really interesting work.
No, that's really good. And no, that's awesome. And check. I think we covered a few questions that I had in here as well. So perhaps I'll ask Fonty a question that you have been involved in the R community, like the R Ladies group and other groups. And for the first time maintainer, what would be the most useful way to get plugged into these groups and perhaps get find resources, also get that peer review thing, get people to test their package before they apply, and get like a bit of a community, and also learn from others' experience. And you might share as well perhaps some challenges that you find that many people starting over might have faced.
Wow, that's
that's a lot.
No, thank you. I think the R open source community is really, really welcoming, and you can rely on a lot of the folks part of the community to give feedback. I know some R ladies, like depending on your local chapter, they do code sharing and code review sessions. So you can, if you want to try out a particular function or workshop or get some feedback or another pair of eyes, I think those are very good avenues. But I also think I want to draw people's attention to our OpenSci, which I think Nick can definitely chime in on, is that they have incredible peer review software process and the documentation of what they're looking for, and like checklists and what can really help, I think, a submission like for the Daikoku one. And I'll pause there to see if anyone else in the panel wants to add to that.
Great. Thank you, Ponti. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I want to mention rOpenSci. They're a really great group. I just posted a link in the chat to their dev guide. This has really good resources. It's a really good resource for. I think the CRAN guide is like, here are the standards that you need to fit. The R packages book is a little bit more. The R packages book by Hadley Wickham and Jenny Bryan is a bit more. Here are some best practices, and the dev guide also just touches on more of those ideas as well. And rOpenSci also provide a software review process, which is really good. It's always how I imagined peer review would kind of work when I was an undergrad, which was like, it's totally transparent, and you can't always have a transparent review. That's like sometimes not the best way, but I really appreciate that their software review is done in public on GitHub. And what's nice about that is that it's a lot of people like communicating online and sharing not just how to, like, if this software is good or bad, but how to make it better. And I think that's really nice. And they're a really great and welcoming group of people. Yanni did she was the keynote, one of the keynote speakers for USAR just recently, and that was, I haven't actually watched the keynote yet, but she is the community, I forget the exact, she's like the community lead, and she does a really great job of like creating a really welcoming space, and like an inclusive space.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else want to share, like, in the community and peer review, or any advice on the testing part of the package? Like, what would be a good that show that was tested? Thank you.
Hey, so I was thinking that like one great thing about the Daikoku package is that it's encouraging student participation. And when you study, that's a very particular part of your life, when you have actually quite huge community around you. And especially if you're a PhD, the peer effects and peers, support is like both essential and ample. And I would like greatly recommend like leveraging these aspects in several ways, in the sense that you can always ask your colleague from the office to try your package and to say a couple of things about that. In terms of even like simple usability, and even observing or hearing what was difficult to understand to them, how to run it, or how they would expect some things to run differently or look differently, would be super beneficial. And another thing is like on this fun aspect that Dai mentioned before, about fun aspect of the package and the programming and the process, is that, in a way, I don't know, I hope that your PhD and your research is fun for you. And if you're enthusiastic about your research, like make it shine through the package. All this small tinkering that you're doing in these methods and in the code, it is unique to this package and this implementation, and it's probably improving people's life greatly. So let it shine and speak of these things, and how you would speak to your colleague or your auntie or I don't know whom.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. That's great. Oh, thank you so much. So I guess if you had, like, I have another question. Like, if you had 1 week left before you submit, or perhaps a month if you want. You can go as far as you want. Where should I spend my time for the biggest improvement? I think we mentioned documentation, but if we can give practical tips as well, perhaps on the on the process, like testing, or like which area of the package and how would you improve that if you just have a short amount of time to make it better?
In my opinions here, so I guess if you only have a short amount of time, the things that you should focus more, as you mentioned, will be the documentations and the front face of the package, because that will be the first thing the judge will see, and they would have their first appearance about the package. And also, so figuratively speaking, usually the package user usually don't care about how your internal function works, if it works like spaghetti or is a mess. Basically, as long as your package is work as advertised and the functions are user friendly, then they will happy to use that. So that would be also, if you only have a short amount of time, that would be the things that you should improve. That try to create some helper function to make the workflow of your package easier, and to also listen from or get some feedback from your colleague or your cohorts, such that you know what they actually want, what they feel, what's the pain point that they found in your package that you need to adjust immediately. And of course, if you have a longer amount of time, then you should focus on something that is more important, like putting some testing for your core functions, or try to format your code to make it more maintainable in the future. Those fundamental things of programming. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick.
Building up on this, I would say that probably the one most impactful thing you can do is to provide a fun hexagonal logo of the package.
That's nice.
I think, just to say this again, the single biggest improvement, you should make it installable. So again, like, it's really good if we can install it, and make sure the code is somewhere. Like, ideally it's on GitHub. There are other websites like Codeberg or GitLab or somewhere. And I'd say, like, at a minimum, and it is hard, like to Dai's point earlier about it doesn't have to be perfect, because it is really, there's a lot of ways to improve our code, and there's a lot of ways to, like, it can seem like an endless task. But I think if you just had a README, and your README answered these questions of, like, why should I use it? How do I use it? How do I get it? That is great. And sometimes in doing that as well, this is similar to testing. Like, as you have like this README driven development, you start to explain it, and then as you do that, you're like, oh, hang on, actually that doesn't really make sense, and then you sort of start to go back. But and that is tricky, and sometimes you might need to rein that in a little bit. But I think if your code is installable and we can see it, we can look at it, and then your code is your code has a README, I think that's really good. And then I also really liked what Thomas said about, like, practicing sharing the code, and I think Patrick said this as well. Like, sharing your code, like, with a friend is kind of like sharing it, like, with your README. Like, the README is you explaining the code, and then if you sit down with a colleague, like someone that you know and trust, there, and, like, will be kind, that can be a really good experience, just to show them how the code works, and then you can get that kind of, like, direct response. You can see them be like, oh, that's weird, I would have expected this, or, like, could be something like, oh, like, why is the data the third argument and not the first argument? Because that means I can't do this thing, or something like that. Yeah, anyway, those are some of the things. But I think if I was to say 3 things, it would be installable, like your code is somewhere and it has a README file. I'm just going to put some of these things, I just wrote these down, I'll just put this in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you. think I might open as well the floor to people to ask their questions if they have, and feel free to turn on your camera, your mic, or type in the chat. Is any of you hoping to submit? Even if you don't, it's not a commitment if you want to share. Hi, Dai, great to see you.
Yeah, I've got a question. So I'm curious in terms of the judge matrix, does the number of downloads and users count? What if it's like a new package and doesn't have that much user experience and use case yet?
I'll let one of the other judges go. I've had a turn, but I have some thoughts. So one of the other panelists go.
So I don't know. I have never been on the committee, but you know, that's like kind of the idea for this award is probably my reading is that it's like allowing high level of experimentation and the creativity from students. So I would believe that nobody would even check downloadable. You know, it can be the aspect, but I wouldn't think that this is essential. It's not like this award is not like publication in a journal, you know, when they really look at the really you know, incorporating of user feedback extensively as a standard practice on a particular package rather than you know, incidental thing. So I would say that, you know, my reading is that the referees are always kind of very competent in making assessments on their own before the audience will step in.
I haven't actually ever really looked at download counts before. I think that's great. If your package has been downloaded a lot, that's really awesome. It's a good sign. If someone's package was downloaded millions of times, but there's another package that wasn't even on CRAN or something, and it was super useful. Like the package that's more useful, will like edge out in that sense, in that way. So I think that those are good things, but I would say your time would be better spent making sure your package. I would even say I would go as far as to say, and I'd be curious what other people's thoughts are on this. Like, if your package isn't on CRAN, like being on CRAN doesn't mean that it's better than the other packages. If you had something on GitHub that was installable and had like a nice README and a website, like versus something on CRAN that didn't have a README or like a website or that documentation, like the one on GitHub shows that there's been more care to the user, in my opinion. Yeah, I guess like sort of the thing that comes up a lot is that we really care about documentation. It doesn't mean that there has to be like 6 vignettes or something like that. It just means that there has to be something to show people, here's like the general way that I would like you to use this. And yeah, your question, Dai, was around like how to, like if we care about other user downloads, was that another question? Or,
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yep.
explaining that, Nick and Thomas. And I guess another question would be, I think most of I don't know, it sounds like a lot of those winning cases are very stats focused packages. I'm curious what's people's thoughts on other kind of implementations, for example, Shiny apps. Shiny apps wrapped in a R package, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think if it's solving a problem, then absolutely. App design is hard. If there's a really good Shiny app, then that is excellent. I would also expect that the core features of the Shiny app would also be like available to the user. I had another thought, but it's just escaped me. But your question was around like if it's just a Shiny, like so like the other formats this could take, if it's like just a Shiny app, or was there something else you were thinking about, or was it just about Shiny apps?
No, I think the package we're developing at the moment doesn't have
Mhm.
a very huge implication of stats methods. So, for example,
Oh,
with Patrick
so,
and
yeah.
other visualize is very stats focused.
Mm,
Our one is more on the apply side of
great.
large
So,
language model and other things.
so one of the winners of the the Bill Venables Award, which is the Australia Wide Award, was by Matt Cowgill, and it was a package called Read ABS, I believe, that it just read a specific type of time series data from the ABS and cleaned it up, and it was really easy to use. And that is like a huge win, just because cleaning up ABS data can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 6 hours, and if you're resolving that pain each time, you're solving like a genuine problem. So I think that's a really good example, something that is like solving a problem that a lot of people have, and it's making like things easier. So I guess if that helps with that, stats is great. That's like a general focus of this. But if you're making things easier for people, then I think that's great.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick.
So maybe as a general comment, if I could add, a little bit generalizing or taking Nick's comments in one direction, like solving the problem for the users. And I wanted to, refer to that. In a sense, when you prepare a package, it is important to think about its users because it's for them, not for you anymore. That's when it gets disconnected. So when you're designing your package, think of what are the standard ways how people work with R. So does your thing has to be a new thing that is specific to your only method, or can it be actually standardized? And sometimes even the order of arguments makes a big difference, or make it standard or allows the application of a pipe, or like you have to think of how in many different ways the users might be using your package and designing their workflows and their scripts. And the Shiny package does, Shiny app package does a similar thing, right? It takes particular problem and thinks of what's the most important thing for the user to look at when you look at this type of data problem, and this type of insights and facilitating that. This is always like that's what a great package does, I think, one way or another.
Great. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Dai. Thank you, everyone, from the panel. Any other questions from the audience? Feel free to type as well in the chat if you don't want to. Alan?
Oh yeah, thanks for a really informative presentation. I guess our packages come in an enormous variety. You've got, I'm thinking of two different sort of ends of a spectrum. One where it's sort of like just a helper function to make common tasks easier, and it seems to be that that's really highly valued. And then there's sort of it's sort of like, but it's sort of low tech in a way, like it's not really like statistically innovative at all. And then there's the statistical innovative ones, which, allow you to, let's say, model a data set that isn't modeled well by anything out there at the moment. I assume that, both of those could be good candidates, but they're very hard to compare because they're, it's apples and oranges. So I wonder if anyone has any thoughts on how to do that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Alan. So I think that like there is this great spectrum from, say, just to pick on some like prominent examples. If you were to say compare the Stan like Bayesian like stats language to something like dplyr. So dplyr is about data manipulation. It's solving a pretty big problem. I would argue that problem has a wider impact on more people. The Stan, like the implementation of the Stan language, has huge impact in ways that is like it's solving a different type of problem that is also very, very hard. And I guess in that sense, perhaps like I would say weight the stats like package in that way, like to say that like if someone submitted Stan, it would be like, well, that that would be very, like, that's a very good piece of software, say. But I do think it is hard, and a lot of it comes down to how well, say, the judges can assess if this is something that they understand and see its applications. So I see this sometimes when I've been a reviewer for the R journal. There'll be a submission of an R package that is like a really, really dense method that is like, say, for example, there's one that was on like copular methods, like in Bayesian stats, and it was really specific, but it didn't really have any examples that I could actually use, and it didn't really explain to me like why this is a hard problem and why this is an important problem. And so that makes it harder to judge because I don't know a lot about copular methods, and that's like a niche thing. But like I know it's important, I know it has like widespread use, but what matters more in that context is if the author can show me like how is this solving a problem that isn't being solved like anywhere, and can I actually run these examples myself? And yeah, so I guess it's like as much as possible trying to seat it in that context of how big is this problem and how are you solving that problem is, I think, really, really important. And that's what Adam did for Tomas's student there. But I agree, it is a tricky thing. And I would say if I was to speak for the other judges, we would probably discuss the statistical, like the significance of the problem that they're solving as well. And that would be something that we'd take into account because it is like a statistical software, but there's also this big sense of like data analysis, and exploratory data analysis is also part of statistics, and at times that can be harder to measure because if you make something that really facilitates exploratory data analysis, sometimes that's hard to put a number on because if there's a method that produces like a coefficient or a p-value or something, that is sometimes more tangible. So yeah, anyway, that's a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but does that like help like with what you're thinking? Yeah.
I guess it's acknowledgement that it's not an easy comparison to make, but yeah. But thank you.
Thanks. It's a great question. I just noticed that Di has dropped off. I'm not sure, or she's dropped off on my screen, but perhaps she's still.
I think she did. She had to leave early as she apologized.
Okay, all good.
Thank you, Nick, for checking and for answering the question. Anyone wants to add to Alan's question or?
I mean, look, in a way, that's what you're asking for is if it's done well, it's a recipe for a success. If I look at the general purpose packages that facilitate doing some things rather than implement particular methods, then one can become jealous. That it's done so well and bringing in so much value added in the community and the user. So a good package does that. That's the good piece of software then, right?
Thanks, Tom. Would you want to say something, Nick? Or
I think I just had some notes here I was just going to say about like some things that I think there are some easy wins that people can do with their software, and I'm just going to paste these in. And I say that these easy wins, these like still require work, but I think I can use code blocks. I can use code blocks. How good's that? Great. So something like this. If you haven't seen the Air formatter, this is like a relatively recent thing in the past 6 months. This is an automatic styler of your code. Code styling is kind of personal, but this is something that you can install now and install in RStudio. And so when you save your code, it's not possible on Posit Workbench at the moment, but for RStudio and Positron, having an automatic formatter just to format your code and style it is just a really nice win. And it sort of, I remember helping a colleague with some code once, and they wanted all of their code on a single line, and it went for like, it was like several sort of scrolls across to read it, and that's just hard to review. And it's an easy thing to fix now. So I think that I wouldn't say that that's required, but it's just like I think everyone, if you knew about these things, that'd be great. So if your code was formatted like that, it's going to make your life a bit easier. The name air is also very good. I feel like it gives you breathing room. Like it's this nice sigh. Good. I don't have to think about hitting space 4 times or something. You should try and pass a DevTools check. Sometimes there might be some things we might, like it's not like a game ender if it doesn't pass DevTools check, but it's a really good sign. There's other things you can do, like you can add GitHub Actions. The use this package has, I think, made a lot of these things a lot easier. I'll try and write this up a little bit and like add a little bit more detail. Maybe we can send this out to people who came on today. But like that really does help. It does get harder as you add more complexity. So if you're adding things like C++, so Tomas's point earlier about if you have C++ on CRAN, you're sort of now open to a whole host of extra things that you might not have known, because say like getting C++ to compile correctly on your computer is great, but then you might get an email from CRAN saying that there's like a valgrind error and it's like a really specific niche thing, and it's that is tricky. The GitHub Actions can help you kind of solve that. So that's like running rcommand check or DevTools check on someone else's computer. So I think that's good. The lintar package, I've just recently started using this. Lints are basically like little best practices. So one example of a lint is like, is your function name more than 30 characters long? And you don't have to have this, but it's a pretty long function name if you have something over 30 characters, or if you have a lot of comments that contain code that just kind of don't like need to be there. I find that the lint, the lintar package just does a good job of flagging these things, and I think it generally does a pretty good job of trying to make it easier, of trying to make your code a bit better. That's one of the things that gets picked up in the good practice package. So good practice GP runs these lints and also like runs a few other checks. And I say here, and again, like on to Dai's point, like I know that this feels a bit like a laundry list of things that it's a lot of stuff, and I don't want to scare anyone off. I think if you could take away one thing like from this is like have your code be installable and have a README, and then like that's great, and you should be really proud of that. But these are things that I think are sort of in order of ease to add to your code. Test coverage, having something like some of the core functions of your test that have at least some sort of test on them is great. You could aim for 50%, like that'd be great, but even just having some tests is great. 80% would be like, wow, that's awesome. And again, these are things that I would be looking for in a judge. Like these would all be huge ticks for me and would make me really happy. And yeah. And then also consistency in naming and styling. That was on to Thomas's point earlier, say like where you put, like if it interacts well with the pipe, or even just think about the names of these like things. If you had, for example, if you use dots in your function names, like get dot data, and then like later on you use get underscore something, and then get like uppercase something. So if you're mixing your snake in your dot case and so on, like that would be something that feels a bit inconsistent, and it would make it harder for me as a user to remember, how do I use this package? Is it dots? Is it underscores? Is it capital letters? And that's just stuff that's going to make it harder for me. And then also having consistency, say, in how the function, like in how all the arguments are passed through as well. So maybe it's data first, or maybe it's X first, or maybe it's like, you know, making sure those things don't swap order randomly throughout. And then also passing tests and passing spelling. There's lots of good ways to check spelling in your code now. But I still find spelling mistakes in my own code, so you know it's not game ender, but it's just like, it's good to know about. Anyway, those are some things that, if I could say like, here are some the basic checks that I would do as I reviewed a package. I would check. I would check the DevTools check. I would check the linter, and I would check the good practice checks. Like those are the first three things I'm going to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you.
So if I may,
Yeah.
a similar point to have a good checklist before, like checking your package, you know, it's like before you submit your new version of a package to CRAN or your package to CRAN, you want to, you know, be a little bit on the conservative side because you don't want the rejection. Basically, it's not that there's a memory on that, but it's good to check it well. So if you have your package managed on GitHub, you can use this function that I included in the chat from package use this, use release issue. So the only thing that it does, it creates an issue in your GitHub developers repository with the checklist of how you can check your package before the submission. So I actually took notes on Nick's steps because these things are not there, but the spell checker of the terms used in the package is there. Some of the like Windows release notes to make certain that the package can be installed on the Windows computers and so on. There's like the whole lot of the checkpoints, and it doesn't have to be the case that, you know, for DICOG Award, you pass all the checks or you will have time to do all this. But in a way, these are this type of like making certain that these standards are complied with. But this is also like, all this is like a little bit like hinging towards or pointing to the point I meant at the beginning and what I meant by read the documentation and read about our packages. So I'm thinking the good, if you are considering submitting the package to DICOG Award, then it is highly likely that this is not the last package in your life that you will write, and it's good to become a little bit, you know, better in writing the packages. So reading the documentation, like knowing like pretty much what's where in the R packages online textbook, and many different things. You don't have to know this by heart, but you have to know where to look for so that when you encounter the problem or when you do the last checks, you go through the chapter and you wrap up the, you know, finalize the work on the package by making certain that some of these standards and assurances are done. And also, if it's about this styling code, I have to say that that's something that I started to appreciate later in my life, but somehow there was always out there. So I started developing R code and for my research and packages because I hated working with other people's code, and especially researchers' code for the reproduction of the results. This is usually very bad. The code that is written in no alignment with any of the styling standards, and that's why it's difficult to work with it. So the package is supposed to be the opposite of that. It's supposed to be user-friendly way of providing the code and making the code readable so that the geeks like you will check the package and they will want to use it because they can trust it, is also facilitated by styling the code appropriately and making the code readable. And that's nice.
I wanted to add on to Thomas' point that the package you submit to DICOG Award will not be your last package, and also you may be still a beginner of package development. I was now when I was submitting my package to DICOG Award, it's actually just my second package, and my first package is developed like 1 or 2 months before the DICOG Award submission. So I was a beginner in package development, but I still won the award because you want to make the package excited, You want to make the user feel that they are engaged, they know what the computations, they understand the workflow and the algorithm. And so yeah, the communications and the message that you provide in your package is very important. And I guess one last thing I would say that recently I found that if the package has no website, I probably just pass the package. Now, no matter if it's a Python package, a C library, or R package, usually if there is no website for documentations or for about or to get started, I would probably think that that package is not really that actively maintained or well maintained. So it gives me a question mark. I will pass it. So if you just have 1 minute or two, try to use package.down to create a simple website for a package that will help it a lot for user to work through your package structure.